He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, let me just show all of you how we get pumped up for The Alex Marlow Show here. Me and producer Misty, we watch on repeat this sensational video of the President of the United States. Check this out.
So let's preserve this secret place for our time and forever for the benefit of all humanity. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Now we're ready to talk. Joe Biden in the Amazon, wandering off into the wilderness. Search parties have been out for him. We have not found him. We did find a ice cream cone that had been melted down and been gnawed at, apparently with some very soft teeth. We had an action-packed show today. Thanks everyone for bearing with me the last day or two where I had some. It was exciting times. I've got 4 children, and you guys know them: Master Marlow Jr., Duchess Marlow Jr., and I had no childcare, and my wife's job is entirely inflexible. So I tried to do all of this jockeying with the children, where I would set up the Nightmare Before Christmas, and then one of them would be napping, and then I would try to knock out all my recordings, and it worked really well on Monday, and then yesterday did not work as well. There was a tantrum from Duchess Marlow that took place. And then I had to bribe her with Swedish fish, which I got multiple negative comments. Those of you who've been emailing at aloha@alexmarlow.com, and I appreciate it, and leaving comments on Rumble and YouTube. All that's very good. It helps the program grow. We were very unhappy. It was out of the Halloween candy bag. Oh, we're fun here, the Alex Marlow Show. We're not fuddy-duddies. We're not sticks in the mud. So we don't tend to keep Swedish fish around. But it is something that I had to be done. And I will tell you that I need to unwind, and I got to ask the audience for some help here yesterday. So I decided how I was going to celebrate the completion of my 2 challenging days with no childcare and juggling all of my jobs at once. And I decided to make myself a pot roast, and tasted great. Flavors were amazing. Overcooked it though. And if any of you have a recommendation on how not to do that, I think I just jacked up the temperature way too high, probably from all my barbecuing that I'm doing during the summer. But I failed. So if you got a good pot roast recipe, aloha@alexmarlow.com. It was been great to read some of your feedback. I'll start with a correction that Kenneth from Indiana sent me. He says he's a huge fan of the show and was shocked and disappointed that I stated that Senator Mike Braun was going to be governor of Ohio. A complete brain freeze on my part. But look, you know what? This is raw. This is a real show. He said he's aghast that a man of my stature can misspeak so greatly. I am too. I'm shocked and I'm embarrassed. But you have to have a high capacity for public embarrassment if you're going to exist in the current media landscape, which I can't tell you I've got that, but I'm trying to learn. So yes, huge apologies. And we apologize to the entire Hoosier state of Indiana on behalf of the Alex Marlow Show. Of course, Braun will be governor of Indiana and not Ohio. I apologize. Mike DeWine is, of course, the mediocre governor of Ohio, and I should not have confused that. So that was a mistake. But I definitely don't take back that I was critical of him and others, including some of my favorites like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and Bill Hagerty, who did not show up to cast a pivotal vote. Now, the logic I was told is that this left-wing appointment got through and John Fetterman eventually would have voted for him, and then Kamala Harris could have broken the tie. But I don't know. You got one job. It's show up and vote for stuff, and we've got to have a high standard. And just because you're a really good guy and we all really like you doesn't mean you can miss votes. I'm not cool with that, and I'm going to call people out if I see that, even if I like them, and I like most of the stuff they stand for. So not good. I brought that up on yesterday's show, and I misspoke during the process. I'm just going to go through. I've been reading emails at the end of the show. I'm just going to start now with it because this is fun. Joanna emails, listening now to yesterday's show, dying at your paws for Swedish fish. Hilarious. Yeah, it was hilarious. I don't even recall that I mentioned that on the broadcast, that I gave out the Swedish fish. It must have been a moment of complete panic. Trying to get these things in. But I appreciate all of you. Some of you are leaving critical comments, which is fine too. One of you mentioned that I have a nervous habit of scratching my nose. It's not nervous. It's allergy season. My nose is itchy. The camera just rolls, guys. We're basically do this show live to tape. The ambition here on the Alex Marlow Show is I want this to be a live show at some point soon. So I want it to be live. I like the live environment. I think it suits me. I think I have a competitive advantage against some of my podcasting colleagues in that I don't think I need to be overly edited. So, part of that is that I'm going to have to either not scratch my nose, or those of you watching on the feed, you're going to have to tolerate it a little bit. So we'll work on that, but always appreciate your feedback, question, comments, pot roast recipes. All of that is good. I mean, I nailed these potatoes too. I actually took the time to do the parboil, where you boil them ahead of time, you freeze them, and then you put them back in, jack up the temperature the second time around, get them in the oven. I did a little butter. I was thinking of doing the Wagyu beef tallow with the baste, but I did the butter. It worked out great. And then overcooked the pot roast. Sad. And Mrs. Dr. Marlow tolerated it. She did not complain too much. I mentioned some of this at the start because I will then jump in now to not great news. We got a couple of big stories that are not great to start off the show. We are on World War III watch, and I'm hardly joking when I say that. The Ukraine has now fired British Storm Shadow long-range missiles on Russia. This is the first time they've done that, and this is a clear escalation. We talked yesterday during the show, and also if you want to go over to Breitbart.com, the latest videos I've been doing at our Breitbart Confidential show, which is an interview show I do with our experts at Breitbart News for premium members. We've been talking about how there's been escalation after escalation coming from the Ukraine side, and Russia acknowledges that this is a red line that's crossed, and they've established clear red lines here. We are crossing them. Kremlin stated that Joe Biden is doing everything he can to prolong the war in Ukraine. And this is a fact. Joe Biden wants the war prolonged because he knows that if the war ends soon, it's going to end with a Russian victory. So unless someone comes in and forges some sort of a peace, and if Putin is to be believed, he's got territorial designs on parts of Ukraine. He's not going to stop until he's got them. So all very disturbing stuff. And as Josh Hawley said that we highlighted on the show yesterday, January the 20th cannot get here soon enough to try to get Trump in there and to start organizing. But Trump cannot go in and start negotiating yet, even though he's the elephant in the room here that is illegal. And trust me, they will impeach him for it if he tries to do it. So the Kremlin says Putin's ready to talk with Trump on Ukraine, but now we got UK weapons going into Russia. And not good stuff. We're seeing Europe start preparing for a potential war. As we reported Breitbart News, Nordic neighbors issue advice on how to survive a war. This comes from the Swedes. And they've got government pamphlets being handed out showing people how to survive an armed conflict. Putin signed this revised nuclear doctrine declaring a conventional attack on Russia by any nation supported by a nuclear power will be considered a joint attack on the country. Simon Kent writes for us at Breitbart. And that's why Swedish government's going, well, if we're to take that literally, then the red line's already been crossed. And we've got to be prepared. Sweden is not a rational people over in Sweden. We had reports on them earlier this week also on how they're actually looking to limit citizenship to those who share fundamental values. And they're trying to crack down on any non-citizen voting, which I'm sure is quite a bit lower than it is in the United States, where we openly invite it in many of our cities. So they're actually trying to have a sane immigration system. Also recall, they were much more sane during the coronavirus than we were. I mean, maybe everything that the secular left was saying all those years, we need to look at Sweden for leadership. Maybe that's true. So anyway, they're trying to crack down on illegal immigration. And we had, I played the video of Mike Johnson yesterday saying that we need to encourage more legal immigration in the United States. We didn't encourage anything. A fun one, though, out of the UK, I will say this as sort of a palate cleanser. Half of young men in Britain would vote for Donald Trump. Just the cultural appeal I was watching today. Again, there's more of the Trump dances going on in the NFL, other sports, professional soccer, known as football overseas. People are doing that Trump dance, and the cultural thing. I mean, more MAGA hats popping up places. And the policies are just better. It's just this whole thing where we're lying to people and acting like men can be women and women can be men. And if you're a woman and you're upset with electoral results, you should basically opt out of public life and never date again and go on big boycotts of intimacy with men. Like all of that is just so off-putting. And that's all coming from the left. They're so uncharismatic now. The left is just, they really are, their policies are bad. Their cultural significance is bad. It's just noteworthy that they kept force feeding Kamala Harris and they continue to do this. I mentioned yesterday at the end of the show, this Echelon Insights poll showing Harris at 41% for a Democrat primary for 2028. Do you guys get that we don't like her? We never liked her. No one likes her. She ran 2020. She ran for 10, 11 months, dropped out months before Iowa, never got a single delegate. She got beat by Donald Trump at the worst margin we've seen in decades for a Democrat. So it is, and that was with the advantages of her being a donor darling and being a BIPOC woman of color. We don't like her stuff. We don't like her dance moves. We don't like that she won't talk to anyone. We don't like her policies. Her policies are terrible. We don't like all the green obsession. We don't like trans obsession. So no wonder people are looking around and they're going, we kind of like Trump now. We get it. We get it. After 8 years, we get it. Ford slashing 4,000 jobs in the EV sales amid economic headwinds. So Ford bet huge on EVs. They might be the biggest EV producer, actually, other than Tesla, at least in the West. And now they're cutting 4,000. That's a monster amount of jobs. Where are the jobs getting cut? Europe. Ford Motor Company, Simon Kent writes again for us at Breitbart News, will reduce its workforce by upwards of 4,000 Europeans and the UK by the end of 2027, citing headwinds generated from the economy, pressure from increased competition, and weaker than expected sales of electric vehicles, leading to a dim forecast. Okay, you guys got that? We don't want your EVs. They're not good enough. They just don't run very long. That's the point Trump always makes. It's really pain in the butt to charge them, too slow to charge them. You don't get enough from the charge. We're not into them. Especially in this economy, we'd rather just be able to go to the gas station, fuel up, move on, get in our way. So all these people that bet big, states like California, it's going to be basically the combustion engine cars are going to be illegal. New ones are going to be illegal soon. People are not into it. The question is, though, where do we go politically from here? Because you see what's happening in England. You see more young men liking Trump. The fertility rates, they're the lowest ever. So how are they going to respond? Recorded live births plunging. If you don't take your demographics seriously, then you're destined to be a failing economic state, to rely on mass importation of immigrants, which has some positives, but if you value your culture at all, it's going to get watered down. So is that allowed to say, or do you get canceled for saying that? It's just a reality. If you do that, then it waters down your demographics. So the question is, do we get more sane or do we get less sane? Well, if you look out in California, the decision is to get less sane. Los Angeles City Council has voted unanimously to become a sanctuary city. This is part of their efforts to resist Trump. And this is the process that we're going through, we're witnessing from the left, is that they've got two choices. Their choices are either embrace that maybe they got some things wrong, maybe some people fundamentally care more about immigration and the price of eggs than whether or not there are women allowed in the men's room or men allowed in the women's room. And maybe they should focus on some of that stuff, or maybe they didn't go hard enough into the leftism. And that's what's happening in Los Angeles, which is just so unbelievable because they just rejected George Gascon. George Gascon, who's a Soros-funded DA who presided over all sorts of reduction in law enforcement in California. He ruined San Francisco, by the way. Then he came down and tried to ruin LA even further. And even the left rejected him. He lost by 20 points in his second election here. And I guess it's just south of me, thank God. But the LA City Council voted on Tuesday unanimously going to be a sanctuary city. So they're not going to comply with federal immigration laws, as they've cited this as a way to resist President-elect Donald Trump's anticipated policies. So that's how they're reacting. A safe haven for illegal aliens. It is a playground for the non-law abiding Los Angeles. If you're a criminal, you probably avoid prosecution. If you commit a felony, look for it to become a misdemeanor. And if you break the laws to come into our country, then you're going to have safe haven there. That's their response. These ideas are wildly unpopular. If you looked at the polling, we're excited about our deportations. We want the deportations. Every time Trump or one of his surrogates goes out there and says we're bringing the deportations, people get excited. We want this stuff. It's very hard to admit this if you're a Democrat. I understand that everything you've been saying for the last 30 years is being rejected when it comes to immigration, that people do not regard it as an act of supreme racism to want to have some sort of national identity, to have a border, to, I don't know, create some of our own babies instead of importing all of them. Those ideas are getting rejected now, and people are talking about them in a more bold way. It's been a long slog for us at Breitbart News. We've been trying to talk sense on these issues for over a decade, and it's always been resisted with just huge intensity. You must be a racist if you think this stuff. It's like, no, of course not. We just believe America stands for something, and we like Americans, and we like American values. And if some people want to come here through the system legally and they want to contribute right away, then yeah, sure, there's a place for that. But it is the bottom line is that there's more to being an American than just physically being here, being a part of our economy. That it is, we're a country with an economy. We're a nation with an economy, not an economy with a amalgam of different types of people. If you're on the left and you're hearing this, you're probably thinking, "No, I kind of get it. Like, maybe I don't agree completely, but it's what's not to get about that." It's been a 10-year effort to try to make these obvious points. And what ends up happening is the left ends up making some of these points for us by allowing their oversight on enforcing the law in this way to bleed into the public square when you see things like an illegal alien who is found guilty of murdering Laken Riley. Famous story came up a lot in Georgia on the campaign trail. Has now come out that this guy was a part of the Tren de Aragua gang, which is really in all of our major cities now. This is the gang that took over all those apartment buildings in Colorado that the media dismissed because they'd only taken over a few apartment buildings. Convicted on all counts, life in prison without the possibility of parole. He should never have been here. Should never have been here. John Binder is the write-up for us at Breitbart News. He writes how a 22-year-old nursing student, Laken Riley in Athens, Georgia, was murdered in February of this year. This guy had a prior felony. He'd been released from the southern border into the United States by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, given a work permit. Jose Antonio Ibarra, a legal alien from Venezuela, found guilty of murdering Laken Riley on the University of Georgia campus, February 22nd. So I didn't know he was Tren de Aragua. That's news to me. His work permit was approved in December of 2023, killed her less than 3 months later. Isn't that unbelievable? We tolerate this stuff. We encourage it in some ways. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris took off all of the wonderful border policies that Donald Trump had put in place towards the end of his administration. So, and we're going to see another surge right now. Texas is bracing for it. They're anticipating another Biden-era migrant surge. And some states, like LA is doing, the way we phrase it, they're extending the welcome mat. Bob Price, who is part of our Cartel Chronicles initiative, where we cover the cartels and the damage they do in this country. He was noting how Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says he's going to do everything he can to protect undocumented immigrants. Texas is going to try to deploy every tool and strategy available, according to Governor Abbott, to try to protect the border and protect and defend the state and the nation. But they're anticipating thousands more people. Of course, they're going to try to get in before Trump cracks down. Of course, this is coming. This could be one of the biggest stories over the next 2 months. We're 2 months exactly from inauguration as we're recording this podcast today. And if you're an illegal alien, you're thinking about coming to, now's the time, right? Take that one out of context. Media matters. This would be the moment because you got to assume that Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, day one, they're cracking down. Texas has offered up 1,400 acres to the Trump administration for criminal migrants for detention and deportation centers. So the Texas General Land Office Commissioner Don Buckingham has offered to lease the incoming Trump administration 1,400 acres of land at the state's border with Mexico, according to our own Bob Price. The land would be used to build a facility for the processing, detention, and deportation of violent criminal migrants. Take it a step further. All migrants, send a signal, we're not open. We are not open. America's closed for now. Got to get this under control. Trump signaled he's willing to use the military. Good. Absolutely. And not just at the border, for mass deportations as well. We need to announce the deportations are coming and you're going to be deported. If you're here illegally, you're going to be deported and you're better off with less of a headache getting deported now. Very sensible comment from Peter Thiel, famed tech billionaire and big-time Republican funder. He was talking to something called the Free Press. I think it's run by that former New York Times person, Barry Weiss, who says a bunch of obvious stuff, and then we all act like it's genius because she used to be on the left. Have you noticed that we anoint people of this? We tell people that they're geniuses because they say obvious stuff, but they used to say a lot of dumb stuff. We do this with Bill Maher quite a bit. I mean, though Bill Maher is clearly a smart guy, but he'll say stuff that we've all been saying for 10 years, and then we're like, yes, he's a genius. Like, well, no, he just caught up. All right. So Peter Thiel said something that is really important, which is that migration spikes housing costs and impoverishes young people. This is a point, again, another one we've been making at Breitbart forever, and it's not something that has been mainstream somehow, which is that illegal immigration and mass importation of an immigrant workforce it makes it harder to buy housing. It makes it harder to afford rent. And this hurts lower class Americans and young people who need a leg up. And we're actually hindering Americans' ability to survive and thrive in this country and to advance because we've imported a bunch of people from other parts of the world to compete with them. So here's Thiel's quote: "The way I model what's happened in the U.S. and Britain and Canada, a lot of the Anglosphere countries, is a real estate catastrophe," he said. "There's ways I can describe this in Los Angeles, where we live, all sorts of places where the real estate prices, the rents have gone up more and more. If we talk about the inflation problem, it was inflation and immigration. That there's a way you could talk about inflation in terms of price of eggs and groceries, but that's not a big cost item. Even for low middle class people, the real big cost item is the rent. I think in some ways, Trump and Vance did manage to shift the conversation a little bit to the real estate problem. Again, I don't want to blame it all on immigration, but if you had to add just more people to the mix, and you're not allowed to build new houses because of zoning laws, and it's too expensive, and it's too regulated and restricted, then the prices go up a lot." This is where I love Trump's cabinet picks, because it's going to be a deregulation bonanza, and it's going to be a clearing out of the deep state. I tell you, I said on this show, I looked it up, I think it was 6 days ago, so it must have been Thursday-ish or so, Wednesday or Thursday last week, where I was saying that Trump's cabinet is going to lead to, I think, mass deportations. And by deportations, I mean people deporting themselves from the deep state, people who will quit. It's one thing when you've got a buttoned up Republican establishment guy, familiar face, who's non-threatening, who takes over bureaucracy. But if you get the Matt Gaetzes of the world, the Robert Kennedys of the world, the Tulsi Gabbards, the Pete Hegseths, people who have more aggressive personality, and you know they're going to come in and clean house, you might start getting your resume ready early. More Trump cabinet picks, and we're starting to get mixed bags, I will say. Linda McMahon is going to serve as the Secretary of Education, Trump loyalist, seems good, been very helpful to Trump for a very long time. Trump really likes the fighting stuff, so Linda McMahon, part of the McMahon WWE empire. So she was director of the Small Business Administration during the first Trump term, seemed to do well in that regard. So no problem there, but co-founder and former CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. So all good there. No issues with that pick, though there are probably some people who might be not household names who might be better administrators there potentially. So I'll be curious to see who she staffs up around her. I did talk to a lot of people who I network with in the deep in this education game, and they had some other people who I'd never heard of who they thought might be better picks. So we'll see. We'll see who she stacks up. Trump has selected Dr. Oz to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I don't get this at all. I don't get the Dr. Oz thing. I love Melania. Melania's amazing. I love Melania's people, but she's friends with Dr. Oz, and I think Hannity's friends with Dr. Oz. So they wanted to find something for Dr. Oz, but I don't get Dr. Oz. I don't get him. I never understood his appeal. He was a terrible candidate in Pennsylvania. Got his butt kicked by John Fetterman, who could barely stand on 2 feet at that point, barely talk. seemed to be brain dead. It turned out he wasn't brain dead. He's actually smarter than most Democrats. And I just don't know why he would have this job. Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This is an administration job. This is administrator. This is a bureaucrat. This is top bureaucracy stuff. It's not. I don't know why a TV doctor would fit here. All right, so skeptical there. All right, he's named former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, UN ambassador to NATO. No issues with Whitaker. Seems like a good guy. And he kind of came in at the end of Trump's administration, seemed to do fine. NATO is increasingly on my SHIT list. So tough guy to go over there and tell NATO who's boss. That's good, positive there. I'll give you quick updates on Gates and Hegseth, which they're taking a lot of heat right now, a lot of flack. They're the ones who I feel like the Democrats think they can get Trump to punt on those. They always try to go for one or two. I'd always thought that there's a possibility Gates was a stalking horse. So there's a House probe into Matt Gaetz, and it's relying on witnesses the DOJ has found lacked credibility, according to Molly Hemingway at The Federalist. So I won't go into all that. You can pull down an article if you want more detail. But it is... Madison Cawthorn said it. He said there are all these sex parties going on in D.C. I didn't get invited to any of those when I was in D.C. I would not have gone, just to let you know, happily married. But I don't know. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. But all these reports, the Gaetz, I guess, sleeping with 17-year-olds is the latest allegations. I don't know if that's true, and he's denied it, obviously. It's definitely going to deflect from a lot of other criticism from other cabinet picks. But if those are the allegations, you're certainly going to see some Republicans not support the pick. So there's a DOJ, there's a House probe with a lot of detail in it. Will it come out? That's the question. And maybe at this point, Gaetz wants it to come out because if these people are not credible and it could be picked apart the same way the Kavanaugh allegations could, maybe he would like it out. I don't know. So Pete Hegseth also under fire because he apparently paid off an accuser, which would have saved his job at Fox, paid someone who he had, I guess, a consensual sexual encounter with. She's now accused him of sexual assault. He paid her off. He denies there was any assault. All this is pretty mild, I guess. Like it's assuming she's not credible. Seems like a bitter person asking for money, but maybe not. If that's not the case, then obviously these are more serious allegations. But this stuff comes up all the time. Isn't the Me Too movement the ultimate boy who cried wolf? Or the pink hat wearing people who cried wolf? Is that what Me Too turned into? The shark jump moment for me was when they had Terry Crews, the giant strapping actor who's, built like a barn, basically acting like he was part of the Me Too movement because someone grabbed his junk at a party or something. Like once that happened, I was out. Like, weren't you guys out? So now we got a double Me Too's going on with Gaetz and Hegseth. We know that people, when you're involved with a famous person who's rich, and you just announce that they've accused you of something, you're going to get money. So people do that. Allow this to be yet another piece of evidence that would suggest I would love to restore in our society the institution of marriage. I would love to bring that back into the prominence. We've got to put that on a hill. You know how you don't have these problems when you find a happy marriage? You don't get any of these problems. Doesn't happen. Just my thoughts. New York Post saying to ditch not just Matt Gaetz, but Tulsi Gabbard, the Rupert Murdoch run, but slightly conservative New York Post tabloid. Please, Mr. President, ditch the dreadful duo Gabbard and Gaetz. And I don't care why. I mean, it just feels like they're annoyed with the fact that they've got people who could potentially dismantle the deep state in there. I mean, that's what we want. I like the wild personalities. I want people to be fearless, to be bold, to be willing to cut our bureaucracy. And then when they do that, to not think twice about it, to be able to take any media heat. So it just makes me like Gaetz and Gabbard more when I read stuff like that. The Post also has a report that Elon Musk has become the top person in Trump's inner circle. There's something going on here. Mark my words on this. There's something going on because Musk is probably the next most powerful person in the world. You can make the case that Mohammed bin Salman, Xi Jinping, there's a couple others out there. But other than Donald Trump, it seems like he's in the top 5, right? So it behooves Trump to make friends with him And Musk seems to be all in on helping Trump. But Musk is not getting everything that he wants. Musk was pushing Howard Lutnick for Treasury Secretary. We still don't know who the Treasury Secretary is, but we know it's not Lutnick, because Lutnick is now going to be the Commerce Secretary, which I think is a better role for Lutnick. But Musk made a big statement on Twitter that he wants Lutnick, and Trump said, no, not doing it. So I think there's something very smart about Trump keeping him close and not doing everything Musk says, which will keep Musk in his place a little bit, because Musk is pretty new to American politics. A lot of his ideas, if you just track some of his ideas over the last couple of years, they've really evolved and matured a lot politically, which is terrific. It's great stuff. But he definitely did not have a fully formed viewpoint politically, especially in the MAGA realm, until recently. And I think he'd even tell you that. He'd tell you it didn't even fully solidify until Trump got shot. So all that's good. All that's good. And the panicking, though, that occurs in the media over Trump's nominations is one of my favorite things I've ever witnessed tracking the media. And of course, I track it nonstop. I wrote a New York Times bestselling book called Breaking the News on the media. And we're starting to get stuff like this. This is happening on The View. Sunny Hostin, who I will not call Hostin anymore. She's now Sunny Hostin officially on the Alex Marlow Show because she's hosting a show. She had to issue a legal correction. She's a lawyer, by the way, on the show. We got this for you. Here it is.
On screen. Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal.
She's leaning into, if you can't see the visual, she's leaning into that this is a hostage video. I think she's blinking Morse code with her eyes when you watch this. She looks so uncomfortable. Oh my goodness.
3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
Just her tortured face is the best part. So those of you who are not getting the shows on YouTube and Rumble, I do think you're missing out. Everyone's telling me that, though. I want you to subscribe however you want to subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, fine. I just want you to get the content. It's mostly audio, but people are enjoying the video visuals, and we're only going to get better at it as time goes on. So, but yeah, that was great. And she apparently, I guess, had misspoke about Gaetz. It had been too intense, and Gaetz' people cracked down. If she had to do that, they should sue. Why not? It's like, why were you allowed to defame conservatives? Why? Do we have no faith that the American people can sort stuff out for themselves? Apparently not. The media's gone that nuts. But maybe the nuttiest of all is a woman named Jen Rubin, who at least until recently was associated with the Washington Post. I think she quit in a huff recently. I already don't care enough to remember, but I know that we're told that we cared about her for a long time, apostate conservative, and now she's just an online hysteric. And she went on this unbelievable rant. I won't play the whole thing. It's a couple of minutes, but I will play for you the key moment. This is how you talk to conservatives, according to Jen Rubin.
And for people who don't get political news, who never pick up a newspaper, who never turn on CNN, who never even bother with Fox News, those people really have no idea what's going on. And that means we have to bend over backwards, not to suck up to these people, not to make excuses for them, but at least to communicate the basic facts.
Okay, so you get the basic facts from CNN, which John Nolte's got a running list for us at Breitbart News of the 50-odd hoaxes that they've reported since Donald Trump came down that escalator, and there will be more and more. CNN's not credible. The ratings are in the tank. I will note that any of you watching this, why do people set up their camera sometimes like it's where their lunch is? This is like her lunch camera. It looks like she's looking down at her desk where she would have her soup and salad at lunchtime. It's a very strange angle. And does no one explain this to her? If she listens to this show, she'll know, but it's not where you position the camera. All right, I'm fast forwarding ahead to the best part.
And you have to be pithy. What do I mean by pithy? How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true. If you're going to oppose vaccinations, if you're going to stop breakthrough medical research, if you're going to allow minors and all sorts of people.
All right, you guys got that? Republicans want to kill your kids. Misty, let's make this a drop so we can play this every day forever. Maybe it'll be a part of the opening of the show. After we watch Joe the Jungle, we'll watch Jennifer Rubin remind us The Republicans want to kill your kids. Let's hear it one more time just so you guys know that I didn't make this up. Listen closely. Here it is, Jen Rubin.
And you have to be pithy. What do I mean by pithy? How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true.
It's actually true. And kill your kids. Why are we having more kids than they are then? They don't even want to have kids. They want to slaughter their children in the womb. I mean, that's their number one issue as a party, is that we want to have unlimited ability to slaughter our children in the womb uncontrolled. All right. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate the content. Very good. What would we do without these people? If they got sane, then I would what would we even do on the show? Disney had a cartoon with trans athletes in it. They had to pull that. So they stopped that, come in their senses. I've got some family friends who work over at Disney, and I always bring up some of the trans characters to them. And I say, why are you guys doing this? When it comes up, they don't share my politics. So I try not to get into it too much. But if we talk, then I mention it. It's like, you guys got the trans characters in the kids show. You guys got the gay themes in the kids shows. Why are you adding gay themes to the Lightyear movie? There was this character called Baymax, which is a man with a period. It's a kid show. Why? Why do you guys do that? But Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur apparently has a plot that contains a trans high school athlete. And they shelved that one. The woke mouse, put that in the shelf. Huge story. Comcast is going to dump catering. They're going to dump the cratering MSNBC and other dying cable outfits they've got. So again, if you want to understand the media, I wrote all this in Breaking the News. This was the point of Breaking the News. Among everything, this was the point. It's not just that they're left wing, that they're corporatist. And the interest of the company is to protect NBC, Comcast, Universal, that does business all over the world, including in China. And these media outlets lose money, but they're really lost leaders because they protect the Comcast brand. Well, the problem is that now they're not making the Comcast brand look good because they've gone too far at this point. Their audience is deserting them. They can't make any more money. Very expensive. So NBC, Comcast, Universal is going to be spinning off USA, CNBC, MSNBC, Oxygen, E, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel, according to a company statement. They're also going to be spinning off digital assets, Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes, and Golf Now, and something called Sports Engine, which I've not heard of. So this is a good sign for us. The stock prices are going down, and cable news is dying. So they're going to stop propping up this business. All that's going to do is create a bigger space for podcasts like mine, networks like Breitbart, networks like Salem. All that stuff is great. And it's all just them having to come to terms with reality. And the reality is people don't want their content. But where I'm very sad about this is that they give me so much content to play on this show. And that's going to be a real transition if that goes away. I'm going to play a clip. This is from, I think it's MSNBC. You're going to notice some of these familiar faces, particularly those of you watching on the streams. Let me roll this one.
New research shows 1 in 5 adults regularly get their news from influencers on social media. The number is even higher among younger Americans, with almost 40% under the age of 30 getting their news from those sources. According to the Pew Research Center, the social media site X remains the most widely accessed platform, followed by Instagram and YouTube.
Okay, so this is Mika Brzezinski. She's reading a CNBC story about 1 in 5 Americans get their news from social media influencers, which is very scary to them. It's because these shows, like a show like mine, it's so easy to produce, so cheap to produce. It's not easy relative to doing nothing. Talking on the phone's easier, but it's easy relative to producing a cable news show. I'll tell you that. And when you have these podcasts are just dominating, they're putting up numbers, they're just dwarfing cable news. Isn't this a big thing for these networks to see the writing on the wall? That people are moving away from the fake objective report. Then you throw it to the talking head. Talking head says something generic, you move on. People like the long form content. They like deeper dives. I'll tell you what we're doing over the Breitbart Fight Club, where I do a deep dive interview every day with one of our experts at Breitbart Confidential. That stuff is so much more dense and informative than anything you're going to get on anywhere in cable news. Not even close. Even the shows I like. There's no comparison. If you really want to immerse yourself in the story. And of course, when you're having comedians on podcasts talking about news, it's going to be more entertaining. So, all right, let's continue.
I mean,
let's see what happens.
Obviously, for political news. And Mike, that's the challenge. You grew up in a newsroom like Gene grew up in a newsroom. I mean, that's a lot of challenge. That's a challenge for a lot of mainstream media sources is, do they make themselves relevant again to here 20% of adults who actually get influencers on social media?
I don't know
maybe somebody who makes baskets, and while they're making baskets, they look up and say, vote for candidate X.
I don't know how we make ourselves relevant again, because we can't compete with 20-second snippets.
How great is that? How great is that? That's Mark Barnacle from MSNBC. It is, how do we make ourselves relevant again? And he's openly opining, how did they let him do that? I guess they couldn't have stopped him. He was sitting there in the chair, openly opining on Morning Joe that how do we make ourselves relevant again? Well, I got a feeling you guys might not be relevant. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it because as younger generations, they're not cord cutters. They're cord nevers. They never had cable and they're not going to have cable. So you're going to have to use the head start that you've got because you've got all this infrastructure, you've got all this money to try to compete and win in the new platform. Some people are doing it. New York Times, NPR, they have very popular podcasts. Maybe that's the way to do it. But these guys are behind the 8 ball, and it's really great to see their ratings tank, their stocks fail, and then ultimately huge disruption in the media business. And this disruption is very much related to all the good news we're getting in America with not just the election, but the fact that as a cultural phenomenon, the MAGA movement is ascendant. The America First political values are ascendant. People are getting bolder, they're getting braver, and there's only good things to come. I'm tempted to update you on the Nancy Mesa's efforts to try to ban men from women's room in Capitol Hill. I like the way people are talking. Mike Johnson flat out saying a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and you cannot change that. All that's good. I think we'll save that. We'll do an update on that for tomorrow. I want to keep these shows nice and tight for you guys, so you continue to download and subscribe. Means a lot to me. Telling 10,000 friends and family members is the only way we can grow. This is it. That's how advertising is very sparse and minimal at this point. You're my best advertisement. So please, if you're liking the content, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. If you have any questions or comments or recipes, aloha@alexmarlow.com, and I will bring up some of those each and every show so that we have that engagement back and forth. It really means a lot to me that you're thinking thoughtfully about what I'm doing. And I think we're off to a terrific start. Thanks so much to our producer, Misty. Check out everything we're doing over at Breitbart.com, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.